You're watching Gravitas. India has a new friend for its oil needs. The first supply of crude oil has arrived from the US at the Pradeep port in India's east coast. But this is bothering Tehran, India's long-time oil supplier. Here's a report.
India's major oil needs are being met from OPEC, the cartel of 14 oil-producing nations. OPEC accounts for 86% of the country's crude oil needs, but there's a new player challenging this monopoly. India has got its first shipment of crude oil from the United States. Oil Minister Dharmendra Pradhan wasted no time in telling OPEC that Delhi has more options and won't hesitate in exploring them.
We expect a reasonable price. We know for the continuous production, there must be price stability. Price stability must be also in interest of consumer. That's the consistent stand India is taking.
For one, American oil is cheaper, saving India $2 per barrel. Among the first to react was Iran, India's third largest oil supplier.
Resolution 2231 of the United Nations and also Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And you know, the process of negotiations between Iran and 5+1, I think that these kind of efforts and these orientations or political orientations are not constructive.
Iran's displeasure isn't hard to understand. India's move not only cuts Tehran's oil revenues, it also limits its access to US dollars, further isolating it from global economic activity. India has significantly cut its oil supplies from Iran in recent months. Tehran has retaliated by withdrawing certain concessions to Indian refiners. But India is a market it doesn't want to lose, least of all to Trump's America.
With the major exporters of oil and gas, especially Iran, which is one of the giant exporters through the OPEC organization, and we do believe that India and Iran can have and can improve their relationships despite the pressures that can be posed from different types of players, especially United States or the European countries. And Iran looks at the exploitation of oil more economically than from the political perspective.
Dropping oil prices continue to hurt OPEC nations. Added competition in the international market is pushing prices lower still, well below $60 a barrel, a price that hurts the shrinking profits of Gulf nations. Bureau Report, WION.
Joining us this evening, Mayor Javed Anfar from Tel Aviv, Middle East analyst. We also have with us Ambassador Vivek Karju, former Indian diplomat, someone who's worked with Iran very, very closely. Good evening to both of you. Vivek Karju, it's a small shift, but a shift nonetheless. The Western media is dubbing it as Washington trying to edge out Iran's influence. Is that going too far?
I think that's going too far. Oil is both a strategic as well as a commercial commodity. And I think it is perfectly all right for India to explore its options and have as many sources of this important commodity as possible. After all, we are not tied to Iran. Yes, India has strategic interests in Iran as Iran has in India. India has also major strategic interests in the United States. So this is a game that Iran has to play, and they must realize that India is a market. And when it comes to commercial dealings, Iran is not the most easy of countries to deal.
Mayor Javed Anfar, what's the buzz in Iran and how much does this decision by India hurt Tehran?
Well, Iran has counted on India as being one of its major oil customers over the years, and also as one of the and also as a supplier of refined oil. The relationship between the two countries goes back many centuries, and Iran was hoping that once the sanctions are lifted after the deal, it will be able to do business with its old customers again. I think this was a broadside that was not foreseen, that the Americans are going to come in and start offering oil to India and also at a cheaper price. I think this on the one hand, I agree with the ambassador that business is business, but the Iranians seem to have a different way. They look at oil as part of the bigger, broader package which makes up Iran-India relations, which today also entails the building of the Chabahar port in Iran, where India is investing $500 million. So the Iranians see this as something that undermines the overall relationship between Iran and India, as much as India has every right to choose who it buys its oil from.
Ambassador Karju, how will India's interest, strategic interests in Iran be affected by this decision? And if India were to follow suit, and obviously they're saying that this is cheaper by $2 a barrel, so India has every right to look at a free market, but it will have consequences.
Well, I don't see really what options does Iran have. Iran has to match prices. If you see the history of India-Iran negotiation on any issue relating to any commercial deal, or what they think is a commercial deal, the Iranians are very difficult when it comes to price negotiations, when it comes to any contract. So if India is, in a sense, as I said, exploring its options, and if the Americans want to be a player here, well, the Iranians must realize that that just as they look after their interests and go very far, India too can. Till now, India plays a patient game. It always tries to be reasonable. But then reasonableness itself has limits.
Mayor, is this being seen, at least in that part of the world, as only about price? Do they see an American role here? The fact that America has been talking about curtailing terrorism funding and also looking at global energy dominance for Washington?
I think if there was a democratic revolution in Iran and a much friendlier government was in charge in Iran, and there was an embassy, US embassy in Tehran, I think that would not have stopped the United States from offering cheaper oil to India. I agree with the ambassador. It's business is business, but these countries, especially Iran, were counting on more. That they were saying that, look, we are a business partner with India. India should look at us as part of a broader package. However, at the same time, I have to say that oil producers around the world have to start facing not just the entry of the United States as an oil supplier, but also the arrival of renewable energy. I think the Iranians have to face the fact that not only India, but China is planning to switch all its cars to electricity. And also we see that Prime Minister Modi is on a path of modernizing India's energy infrastructure, and India is one of the biggest countries in terms of net investment in renewable energy. These are all challenges which all oil-producing countries face. America would not have acted differently, but Iran, we have to looking at it from the Iranian point of view. They were looking at some kind of investment by having strategic relationship with India, and I think they're going to be disappointed. But I think India is not going to be the only country that's going to disappoint them, and not just because of oil. I think soon China will start disappointing Iran and other oil-producing countries because of the drive for renewable energy.
Ambassador Karju, I'm told you want to make a point. I also want to ask you at the same time that ONGC, we know, is going to be bidding for the rights to an oil rig there. We've already brought up Chabahar. How do these moves get impacted if India shifts its focus and goes to the US?
No, I agree that whenever it suits Iran, it projects relations as a package. But whenever they think it is in their interest not to do so, then they segregate different parts of the relationship, and they say that one aspect which, for example, India wants, but they do not give, they say that should not impact on other aspects of the relation. Now, India is doing just the same. So it is, in fact, taking a leaf out of Iran's book. Now, as far as ONGC is concerned, India's involvement in both upstream and downstream activities in Iran has not been the easiest. So here, if Iran wants us to continue to look at it for India's oil needs, then it must realize that it will have to sweeten the deal in other areas as well. It can't, as I said, it must realize that it takes two hands to clap.
Mayor, why is the United States?
Can I add one more point?
Yes. Why is the US selling oil to India when it imports 50% of its own oil needs?
Well, on the one hand, America is trying to become an oil exporter, even though, as you quite rightly said, because President Trump, a major part of his supporters were from the oil sector of the United States. But I'd like to add another issue from the Iranian point of view. The Iranians, the ambassador said, what can Iran do? Well, one of the things Iran is hoping on that it can use as leverage in its relations with India is that Iran knows that the only overland path to Afghanistan runs through Iran. And we all know that that's one of the reasons why India is investing so much money in the Chabahar port, so that they can offload equipment, and without having to cross an inch of Pakistani territory, Indian trucks could go transit through Iranian territory all the way up to Afghanistan, and to increase the influence of India in Afghanistan that way. That's one of the ways Iran is hoping to use its leverage against India. Will Iran do that? It's not clear. I have to agree with the ambassador. India's economy is far more diversified than Iran. Iran's biggest exports, for a country with so many talented people, unfortunately, its top exports is oil and gas. When that's your main two exports, you don't have a lot of leverage and cards to play when it comes to relations with other countries. And on top of that, unfortunately, we hear the rhetoric coming out of Iran also has made it more difficult for Iranian businesses to pick up customers around the world.
Ambassador Karju, final comments. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, on Chabahar, has the Indian experience with Iran been very smooth? No. Perhaps what the Iranians can offer us is far more active cooperation, far more energy in taking the Chabahar route.
Is this a pressure-building tactic then?
No. Well, in this game, you apply all kinds of tactics and strategies. But the point I'm making is that Iran will now have to be more responsive to India's request. But bear in mind that India, on the political stage, as far as the region is concerned, has always charted a very, very careful navigation. It has not taken any sides. It has had excellent bilateral relations with the countries with which Iran is friendly, also countries with which Iran is inimical. And that is an aspect of India's policy that will continue. But then, as I said, the Iranians must realize that they've got to now come forward, and they can't take an approach that this is a package and look, don't hurt our interests, but when it concerns Iran's interests, we will act to safeguard ours. India will act to safeguard its interests, and it's a good thing that India's sources of this strategic and vital commodity, which is also commercial, as I said, are increasing.
Absolutely, that's a fair point, I think. Thanks very much, Mayor Javed Anfar and Vivek Karju, for joining us here.